Hello my people, FinerBub here. Thanks for checking out the video. Today we're talking about camera gear. Specifically, all of the gear that I bring with me on my hikes to make these videos. But before we get into that, just a little tidbit for those of you who don't know. On this channel, I'm all about sharing my thoughts and experience on the best spots to check out and the best gear to bring with. So if like me, you want to spend more time outside appreciating the finer things in life, do yourself a favor and consider subscribing. Also, feel free to check out the description below for links to all the gear or videos or information resources I mentioned. Alrighty then, without further ado, let us begin. So as I just mentioned, today we're talking about video gear. So I'll talk about the gear that I personally own that I use to film my hiking videos, and then I'll talk about some other equivalents that are a little bit more up to date with the modern technology, because unlike the camping and hiking gear that I typically make videos about, tech products typically have a much shorter life cycle than say tents or backpacks and things like that. And so backpack companies, tent companies, they won't come out with new versions every single year, whereas camera companies or any other tech product for that matter gets updated much more frequently. So if by the time that you watch this video, all of this camera gear is obsolete, you should be able to apply a lot of the principles that I tell you, and through a little bit of research, you'll be able to determine what the best option for you is at any given time, whether it's a year from now or 5 years from now. Wait, hold it. Now, I've been hiking for years with just my cell phone, and it takes great videos. So why not just use a phone? Phone has time-lapse mode, it has awesome slow-mo, it can film video, it can do photos, portrait mode, panoramas, sky's the limit. It's got everything you need right on there. Hello my people, FinerBub here, blah blah blue blah 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 blah. So it's also got a selfie screen and a front-facing camera so that you can see yourself and frame up your shot nicely when you're doing these talking head portions of their videos. Why not just use the phone? For bare bones use, yeah, you can use your phone. When I first started making these videos, I did use my phone a lot. However, you start to realize once you start importing the footage onto your computer and blowing it up and trying to mess around with the colors a little bit, make it look a little bit nicer, the contrast, those sorts of things, cell phone footage starts to fall apart. See? Beautiful 4K video. Why can't I just use my phone there, Mr. Bub? When you hear specs like 4K video or a certain number of megapixels, it can kind of be misleading because megapixels are only really relevant to photography, not videography. 4K video only requires something like 8 megapixels, and cameras nowadays are coming out with 20 megapixel camera, 30 megapixel cameras. So there's this little chip inside the cell phone behind the lens called the image sensor, and that's basically the digital film that senses all the light coming in through the lens and converts it into the image that you're seeing right here. However, on a cell phone, that chip is very tiny, and then, you know, on an action camera, like a GoPro or something, it gets a little bit bigger, and then on like a point and shoot camera, it'll be a little bit larger, and then a DSLR, like the one I'm filming on right now, is larger than that, and then you have what's called a full frame DSLR, which is even bigger than that. So the larger the image sensor is, the more light can reach it, and therefore the more data the camera's processor has to work with and can therefore spit out a cleaner image. So even though they stuff tons and tons of megapixels onto this tiny little sensor, it doesn't mean that those megapixels are going to be getting nearly as much data and information as, say, the same amount of megapixels on a larger sensor. So don't get all bogged down with the number of megapixels because it can be misleading. So it's the next day. Sorry for the continuity error, but I forgot to mention this when I was talking about why you shouldn't film with a cell phone. Yeah, I talked about image quality, which is significant. However, the main reason why you shouldn't use your phone for photos and videos when you're out hiking and why you should have a separate camera is because you should save your phone battery for phone related things. I generally carry a paper map with me of the location that I'm in, but I only use it as the backup. The phone is really my main navigation, whether I'm using the Hiking Project app or the All Trails app. If you're saving your battery for navigation, then there's no worry that you'll run out of battery because you're filming and get lost and not be able to find your way. Another benefit to having cell phone battery is that even when you don't have service, you can still dial SOS. And so having a phone battery is really valuable for that. That way people can come and find you. Another thing I like to do when I go hiking is to download the offline maps on the Google Maps app, because oftentimes there isn't any service at the base of the mountain, because whenever you're going to a mountain, oopsies, whenever you're going to hike a mountain, you're generally going to start in a valley, and valleys are notorious for having terrible cell service. So it's definitely worthwhile to download the offline maps onto your phone before you go to a given location, so that even when you're done with the hike and you get back to your car, you can still navigate your way back home, or at least back to an area that has some decent cell service. All right. So I'm just gonna go through this right now, tell you everything that's inside here. This is the Tenba BYOB camera insert. I think it's the number 10. Not to be confused with the Tenba BYOB DSLR backpack insert. You can fit a DSLR in here with a couple lenses, and that's actually why I bought it. However, it suits my current setup pretty well, and I'll explain all of that right now. So first, let's talk about the camera insert. It fits nicely into all of my day packs. It's lightweight and padded. It's not waterproof or anything, but the great part about it is it can sort of act as its own standalone bag, so I can take it out of the backpack, set it down on the ground, or carry it myself just as a separate thing. It has some little nylon loops on the edge here, has a nice D-ring on the front, so you can put a backpack strap on this thing, or a shoulder strap rather, on this thing, and use it as like a little sling pack for a camera. I don't really use it that way, but it's nice to have that convenience. So on the outside, we have two tripods. This is the Manfrotto Pixie Evo, and then this is the Ultrapod. These are both tabletop tripods, which means that, you know, they're not full length. The Manfrotto Pixie does have extendable legs, so you can get it up a little bit higher. And it also has this little adjustable switch right here, so that you can either have it like this, or if you need it to go lower, this flattens out even further. So originally this was my main tripod when I'm hiking, but it's a little clunkier, it's a little heavier than this one, so this has kind of become my backup one. And this one does sometimes make a little bit of a rattling noise because of those adjustable things, so I've put hockey tape around each one of these legs here. It, first of all, is much easier to grip when it's sweaty, but it also rattles a little bit less, because when these things clack together or when they shake around, yeah, you can hear that. It's a little bit rattly. This has a nice adjustable ball head, and it can screw into the bottom of any DSLR camera or any regular 1/4 inch 20 little screw built in right there. But I put this Arca Swiss plate on here because I only use Arca Swiss plates for my cameras, and so this way all of my tripods can go with all of my cameras. Normally, if I'm filming with this tripod and I'm just walking around, it works really well as a nice little selfie stick. I just get the camera on there and then point it towards myself like so. Hello, my people. We'll talk about this guy in a second, but I recently started using this Ultrapod. It comes with a little Velcro strap that goes right through here so that you can like lash it to a tree if you need to. I just keep that in the camera insert because I don't really use it, and when I'm holding it like this to film myself, the scratchiness of the Velcro can make some extra noise that, you know, messes up the audio. But yeah, this thing can hold a pretty heavy camera. I usually just use it for my GoPro, but yeah, we will get into that a little bit more. So tripods. So starting with the meat and potatoes of this camera pack setup, this hiking camera setup, is a GoPro. This is the Hero 7 Black Edition. So when it comes to buying cameras, I've gotten into this habit of intentionally buying old models just because cameras are really expensive and it's just cheaper to buy the older model. Previously, I had a GoPro Hero 3 that I used in my Thailand and my Iceland videos. Then I bought a Hero 5 because it was the first one that had the touch screen on the back. I used that for a really long time. And I recently got the 7. If you want to see some footage from this camera, the majority of my Maroon Bells 4-pass loop videos were filmed on a GoPro Hero 7 Black. There are some shots that I got with the Hero 5 Black and a few other shots that I got around nighttime with my nicer camera that I'll show you in a minute. But yeah, the majority of the shots on that trip were filmed with this camera. And what I like about the GoPro is that it can be the only camera that I use. And what do I mean by that? It can be the only camera that I use. If you want to make YouTube videos where you're just talking to the camera and you're walking around holding it and you can't just like put it on a big tripod, you don't want to carry a big tripod like I'm filming on right now, then you need a wide angle lens, because you're not going to be able to get far enough away from the camera to really get a decent shot in. And so the GoPro action cam, I mean, you can really use any action cam, but GoPro is kind of like just the most reliable and the best. I'm definitely interested in checking out the Insta360R, which is kind of like this modular 360 camera. I don't know, I haven't gotten into 360 cameras yet, but I hear they're great. However, this is what I've been using, and yeah, this is what we're going to talk about today. So whenever you see me talking to the camera when I'm hiking, it's usually this setup right here, Ultrapod with GoPro Hero 7 Black, just like this. And I can hold it pretty close to my body and it still gets my full head in the shot and, you know, some of my body too. I usually film on the linear mode just because it looks less like, you know, GoPro fisheye action camera. However, you can do it in wide mode, ultra wide mode, and I usually film in 60 frames per second. The benefit of filming everything in 60 frames per second is that I can take any of the clips and just slow them down. And it does take up a little bit more memory and hard drive space that way. However, I find that especially when it comes to like stabilization, filming in 60 frames per second and the ability to slow shot down, especially for like B-roll shots when you're walking and filming at the same time, slow-mo makes a huge difference. So why did I upgrade to the 7 from the 5? The main reason is stabilization. This camera has incredible image stabilization. I can basically walk and, you know, it bobs up and down a little bit, but it is so much smoother than the previous one, which was just shaky and jolty, and like it was honestly hard for me to watch some of my older videos. If I was out filming by myself, I might take the time to like put the camera down, walk past it, and get some nicer shots, but most of the time I'm just trying to document the fun times that I'm having with my friends. Hey look, there's Pumbaa! Say hello, Pumbaa! Hello! And nobody's gonna have a fun time if you're just telling everyone to stop so that you can film every 5 seconds. So yeah, the stabilization is really beneficial. Another reason why I like the GoPro is that the batteries can be charged with USB. I have this dual battery charger. I have 4 batteries for this. I don't use all the batteries on a day hike, but if I'm going on an overnight hike like the Maroon Bells 4-pass loop video, I can charge the batteries in my backpack while I'm hiking, while I'm filming. I have 2 external batteries. They make better ones now, but I have this one small one that's like also a flashlight, has USB plug right there. This one's good for about 1 cell phone charge. And then I have this slightly bigger one that has 2 USB ports, so I can just plug this guy into here, charge 2 batteries at once while I'm still hiking or while I'm sleeping or whatever. So that's really beneficial. So yeah, the GoPro is great. Even though it's technically my B camera for when I'm out hiking, it can be used as the only camera I use. I can get some pretty decent B-roll shots. You can film in slow motion. You can get time lapses. It's wide enough so that you can film yourself like this. If you have like a telephoto zoom lens, you can't do everything that you can do with a wide lens. I mean, telephoto is nice and it's good for portraits, taking photos and videos with a blurred out background, but you can't film yourself at arm's length, and you also can't just like get huge scenes in the picture at once. My GoPro Hero 3 is what I started this channel on. GoPro is absolute essential for me. It's not the first camera I've ever used, but it is the camera that I use the most by far. There are some compromises to the GoPro. The downsides are the image quality for one. Right now I'm filming this on my Canon EOS 80D APS-C DSLR with a wide angle lens here, and that makes the picture look much nicer. However, this is too heavy for me to carry on a hike. I used to carry it on hikes and I barely used it. I would just use the GoPro because I didn't want to carry it. You know, this thing I can just stick in my belt loop or just even fold it down and shove it in my pocket, and I can just whip it out, record my thoughts without having to stop, without having to set anything up, without having to worry if the rain is going to ruin it. If it's raining, I just use the GoPro. If I'm filming myself, I use the GoPro. If I'm filming other people, I use my other camera, but I could use the GoPro. So yeah, GoPro, super valuable. I bought the 7, the 8 had just come out, the 9's about to come out like tomorrow or something. It's probably gonna be out already by the time that this video drops, but I wouldn't buy any GoPros that are older than the 7, because the 7 is really where the stabilization just got kicked up a notch. It's just much smoother. You can film while you're walking, and yeah, it just looks way better. And also the audio is much better, and that's gonna be a key component that I'll get into in a little bit. I have a little hydrophobic lens protector on there. I'm not entirely convinced that it's the right move, just because I feel like I've been getting kind of a green tint in some of my videos, especially when I'm in the woods and it's like really green. but yeah, I usually film 60 frames per second, linear mode with the Pro Tune on, flat picture profile, automatic shutter speed, and 550 Kelvin white balance for daylight. Right now I'm filming in white balance for daylight, but you can obviously just do automatic mode and it'll work fine too. A lot of my older videos are on automatic mode, and yeah, I just mess around with the settings because I like to learn about these things. So yeah, wide angle, slow motion, stabilization, USB battery, waterproof, and portable, durable GoPro with the UltraPod. All right, so the pièce de résistance. This is my main A camera. It is a Sony RX100 Mark V point and shoot camera. It has a 24-70 zoom lens, and yeah, man, there are so many things to say about this. So why did I get this camera in addition to the GoPro? Well, this camera has significantly better image quality than the GoPro. Anytime you see close-up shots with a blurry background, I'll play some clips that I filmed on this camera and you'll just see like how much nicer it looks. The sensor is bigger. It's like a 1-inch sensor, so it's taking in a lot more light than the GoPro is, so it has just more information to work with. All of my photos that I take out when I'm hiking are with this, and then anytime I'm getting some good B-roll. You want to use the camera with the best image quality whenever you can. So I'll try to use this camera as much as possible, and then if I can't use it, I'll use the GoPro. So if I'm filming other people, I'll use this. But if it's raining, I'll use the GoPro. This does have a flip screen, so I can see myself when I'm filming. However, the lens is a little bit too tight to film at arm's length. I'm holding both cameras at exactly the same distance from my face. The GoPro is much better at the quick and dirty shots where you just have to get the camera out fast, press record, and capture the moment. It's also much better for documenting informational stuff, like when I talk about where we are in the trail or what my thoughts are about any given part in the hike. The Sony, on the other hand, has much worse audio, so it's not quite as good at documenting my thoughts in a way that I can use it in my video. I'm much more likely to get good results out of the GoPro just because it has the wide angle lens and you can't really miss, so to speak. You can't really miss the shot because everything's in the shot. So you have like documentation information shots, which are just sort of me delivering useful information, or what I hope is useful information, to the camera so that I can integrate it into the video. But then there's also the aesthetic shots that just make everything look nice, and that's really what the Sony is for. So when I say that you can technically do everything on the GoPro, that's to say that if I forgot this camera at home, it really wouldn't make a big difference because I can still get some artistic shots on the GoPro. They're just not going to look quite as good as the shots on the Sony. Another thing I have on here is this Peak Design capture clip, and that clips right into my backpack strap on the side. Bam. But it's also compatible with these Arca Swiss plates. So when I'm using this, I just slide it right into here, and then you can tighten it with the little knob on the back, and that shouldn't fall out. I have dropped this camera. See, it has a little dent right there, and now the flash doesn't pop up anymore. But I honestly just used to keep a piece of hockey tape covering this whole top here, because whenever I'm holding the camera down low and filming, I would be looking at the screen facing downwards, and then I'd be sweating and it would drip right on top of the camera, and I just really didn't want any water getting in there and potentially ruining it. So I covered it with a little bit of electrical tape and then some hockey tape for grip, but that ended up creating some overheating issues. This camera isn't perfect. First of all, this camera has terrible audio. So even if I do want to film myself with this, it's just gonna sound bad. It has a 24-70 millimeter zoom lens, which is not that far of a zoom. However, it has a maximum aperture of f1.8, and that's like how wide the lens opens, and that can affect things like how blurry the background is. So if you want a blurry background, you want to go with a wide aperture, and that's a lower aperture number, because you have to think about it like a fraction. f1.8 is really f over 1.8. So like f11 is really f over 11. So that's a smaller aperture, whatever. It makes things in focus. So if you want to get like those cool sun stars, like where it's like beams of light coming out of the sun, you want a high aperture. And if you want to get a nice blurry background, then you want a wider aperture, lower number. So why did I get this one instead of the newer one? Well, first of all, price, and second of all, a wider aperture also works much better in low light conditions. A lot of the times I'm filming and I'm in the woods. So another benefit is that this also has a built-in ND filter. What's an ND filter? It's like a sunglasses thing that sort of pops down in front of the lens. So for really bright days, that ND filter is really beneficial. You usually don't want to be filming right in the middle of the day when it's super sunny out because you get these weird and harsh shadows. But you know, if you can find a spot with even lighting, even if it's a little bit too bright, the neutral density filter really makes a difference. That's why I got the Mark V. I usually only use it for shots that are not going to have audio. However, occasionally I will end up using the audio just because it's all I had. You can see an example of that in my hiking the perpendicular trail video from Acadia National Park. That entire video was filmed on this camera. On the Maroon Bells 4-pass loop videos, all of those like fancy B-roll shots around the campsites of the flowers and of like sunset and that sort of thing, that was this camera as well. So you can see that it definitely has a much nicer image quality. You can do a lot more with this camera video-wise than you can with a GoPro, but you can also not do as much as a GoPro because this obviously is less durable, not waterproof, and yeah. I also have this small rig camera cage around it. This camera is actually much smaller than it looks. That's really the size of it. And then this is really just a handle, helps with grip, helps protect it. Dropped this camera a few times and generally it's been protected, but you know, it does have a few dings in it and you know, it's just something I have to live with. Like the flash doesn't pop up anymore, but I never use the flash anyway, so it doesn't matter. So even though this is an older model, Sony eventually did recognize that people really liked the lens and a lot of the features on the Mark V after they switched to the Mark VI and they changed the lens and continuing on with the Mark VII. So they just came out with a new camera that's basically a replica of this, the Mark V, except it has a lot of the good features of the Mark VII. So the Mark VII has all these new autofocus features that are much better than the ones on this camera, and it has an audio jack where you can plug in an external microphone that makes it have much better audio. Sony came out with this camera a few months ago called the ZV-1, and it has this lens with the ND filter and everything I talked about that I like about this lens, but it also has all of those features from the Mark VII that are really good for video, like the audio jack. It has a much better microphone. Instead of having a, see look, this is like a pop-up viewfinder so I can like look through here. Never use it. It's just another thing that can break on here, and that's why I taped it up, because I didn't want water to like soak in through there or anything. But yeah, on the ZV-1, this whole area is just a much nicer microphone. It's got a much bigger record button. This record button is tiny. So I always push it by accident, and I'm always like recording when I don't want to, or I end up stop recording before I want to. And that is a huge pain, especially when I'm sweaty. Like, look how big my thumb is compared to this button. It's a tiny, tiny, tiny button. Yeah, I would go for the ZV-1. All right, so another thing I bring in my pack when I go hiking is this little shoulder strap. This is a GoPro mount, and it just Velcros right around my shoulder strap. This basically just replaces the chest mount for the GoPro. I used to wear the chest mount a lot. I didn't like wearing the head mount. Felt like it looked a little too weird in the video. The chest mount though, it was a good height and it filmed kind of everything. And you know, this isn't quite as good as the chest mount image quality wise, but I don't have to carry this big strap thing with a chest plate that like is uncomfortable to wear. So this can just strap right around my backpack shoulder strap and film first person type videos. I also use this when I'm skiing a lot. You can also set this up on a tree if you want to find a branch. You know, it's just a very versatile little tool and it doesn't take up much space at all. So next I have a battery case, and this can fit DSLR batteries in here, but I don't use DSLR batteries when I'm hiking, so I just use it for the things that I need. So this right here, battery charger for the Sony. I can plug this in with USB and charge it with my USB power bank while I'm hiking. So super convenient to have that tiny little charger. I also have a larger charger that charges 2 batteries at once that I can plug in my car, or I can plug in at home, but this is about the stuff that I bring hiking, so we're not going to get into that now. And then I also have 4 batteries for the GoPro that I have labeled 1 through 4 so that I can evenly rotate the batteries and I know which ones have been used and which ones haven't. And then I also have 4 batteries for the Sony. And then in the fourth pouch, I just have a bunch of these little end loop rechargeable AAA batteries that I use for my headlamp. I also keep a few extra disposable batteries in here because when you go hiking, your friends are inevitably going to forget batteries for their headlamps, and then they're going to ask you to borrow some batteries, and then you're going to give them rechargeable batteries, and then they're going to forget to give them back. So when you buy rechargeable batteries, you should also buy disposable ones just to give to your friends who are inevitably going to forget theirs at home. All right, that's that. I also do keep a cell phone clamp that can screw into my tripod if I need to. Occasionally I will use the cell phone for something like a time lapse, or if I have nothing else on me for whatever reason, I put my pack down, ran up a hill, whatever it is, I don't know. I have this just in case, but I generally try not to use my phone whenever possible. And then the last thing is this guy. Zoom H1N audio recorder. The reason I bought this was because the Sony RX100 Mark V does not have an audio jack. I've done some of my voiceover work with this thing. I have a different mic plugged into my computer that I use when I'm just at home. But yeah, this little audio recorder, this takes AAAs also, so the AAAs are good for that. The rechargeable AAAs, I should say. This is super lightweight, it's a tiny little thing, and you can use it as a microphone like this, and then I also have like a little wind muff if I'm trying to record like some ambient noises. I don't really do that often. I'd like to get into it more, make my videos a little bit more immersive, but typically whenever I do record audio, it always ends up picking up the sounds of like my backpack creaking around, or like my hands on the thing and my breathing really heavily or whatever. So the main reason I have this is so that I can get some backup audio. Sometimes the audio on the GoPro craps out, especially if it's wet. Water gets in the little microphone. It won't damage the camera, but it does make the audio sound a little bit more muffled. And also if I'm using this Sony, which has pretty bad tinny audio, really just sounds like, I don't know, 1970s speakers like inside of a tin can. So yeah, this has come in handy. I generally will just press record at the beginning of a hike, stick this in my backpack, and then I have this little, I think it's called the Rode Smart Lav, which is actually a phone jack, but then I got a little adapter that connects it to a microphone adapter so that it can plug into here. This is the audio straight out of the GoPro. This is the audio straight out of the Sony, and this is the audio out of the Zoom H1N audio recorder with the Rode Smart Lav. So then I just clip this to my shoulder strap of my backpack and then thread it through the hydration bladder hole in my backpack and then connect it to this. It's not a great method. I personally find it a huge pain to try to sync up the audio, but occasionally if I do have a clip that I want to include in the video and the audio is terrible, this really does save me. So it's an extra measure. Audio files don't really take up that much memory, but yeah, if you get the Sony ZV-1 instead of the RX100 Mark V, then this is just unnecessary. So the last thing, okay, yeah, so I guess we can talk about some of the other things that are, what time is it? A few more minutes. Okay, so some of the other things that I keep in here, I have this little lens pen, which is got like a little brush on one side that I can just clean off the lens, and then it also has a little fine tip thingy right there that can really get the smudges out. So I also carry one of these microfiber cloths, clean off the lens whenever I need to, but if that thing gets dirty, then I have these pre-packaged lens wipes right here, just in case. I have an extra microfiber cloth here, koala cloth, good stuff. I have this stupid dongle thing for my phone, which I never use, but might need. So I have to carry it just because I'd hate myself if I didn't have it with me when I needed it. And what else is in here? Oh yeah, this is an airplane safe multi-tool. There's no knife on it, no anything like that. So it's TSA friendly, and it's got just like all of the different Allen wrench sizes that you'd need for, you know, tripod plates and things like that. Some tripod plates also need a flat head, and then it has a smaller Allen wrench, a Phillips head, and like one of those star shaped ones on this side. So this is made by Small Rig. It's the same company that makes the cage that I use for my point and shoot camera. The last thing that I have in my bag is this Pelican case, which is just a waterproof SD card holder. This is especially useful for longer trips, and it has space for micro SD cards as well as full-size SD cards. And you can probably fit the CF Express cards, those new ones, in there too, though I don't really use them. So yeah, very useful Pelican case. And then a couple extra things. I don't usually use this when I'm hiking, but for my skiing videos, I don't really use the tripod. I've been using this selfie stick as a Manfrotto selfie stick. It's like super long, but I usually only use it like this. Put some hockey tape on here. It's a little bit less cold in the wintertime when I grip it, and it doesn't slide on my hand quite as easily, but yeah, it really helps with stabilization. You get less jerky movements, and you know, it's got a nice twisty ball head right here, and then I put a metal GoPro mount on the top, but you can screw this part here. You can just take that off, and it's got a 1/4-20 screw right there, so you can put other cameras on there as well. That's really everything I carry with me when I'm hiking. I mean, I could go on and on about this. This is a really huge topic, but yeah, I mean, if you were trying to replicate my setup right now, I would say that you should go for the Sony ZV-1 as your main camera, and then go for the GoPro Hero 8 or the Hero 7, whichever fits your price range. What's great about the ZV-1 also is that it's much cheaper than the RX100s. It's really a great camera, and I honestly, like, I'm tempted to buy one, but can't really justify the cost right now. So, you know, I'm sticking with what I have and just gonna make the most of that. But yeah, I would go for the ZV-1, I would go for the GoPro Hero 8, and then you don't need an audio recorder and it'll take up less space. If I were to upgrade, I would probably go for one of the Sony mirrorless cameras. Previously, I was really into Canon just because Canon cameras are just much easier to use. The touchscreen is just so simple. The screen flips out to the side and it can go in all different directions. It's much easier than the Sonys that just sort of flip up, or a lot of them don't even have flip screens. But yeah, the new Sony cameras, they've really stepped it up, and the user interface is like a lot nicer, and they're also much smaller, much more compact than the Canon cameras. There are a million reviews on all these cameras on YouTube. You know, the great thing about YouTube is that literally every channel has a camera review because they all use cameras. So you have so many resources available to you to sort of get opinions about this stuff. I'll put links down in the description to the modern equivalents of what I think is best to replicate this. Obviously, those will be affiliate links. So if you found that this information has been helpful for you in making a purchasing decision, I'd really appreciate you using those links. It helps support me and content I produce on this channel, get a small commission from that. So yeah, I'd really appreciate that. Thank you very much. But yeah, that's really all there is to it. So there you have it, folks. I want to wish a very warm welcome to those of you who are new to the channel. If this is the first video of mine that you've seen, I want to let you know that I also make hiking videos in addition to the gear review videos like this one, or the gear showcasing videos like this one. So if you're curious about some of the other gear that I use, or you just want to learn about some more exciting new places, be yours truly. I'll leave some links down below that should suit you quite nicely. Alrighty, my people, that concludes today's episode of the FinerBub Show. If you've already used the Sony RX100 Mark V, or the Sony ZV-1, or any of the GoPros I mentioned, or any of the other gear I mentioned in this video, I'd love to have you comment below, especially if you think your insight can help me disprove something that I think I already know. But before you do, I just want to thank you oh so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. If you're looking for new gear or planning your next trip, don't let the small details stress you out. Remember, life's an adventure, so relax, breathe in the outdoors, and don't forget to appreciate the finer things in life. See you out there, people. Peace.